Great RPGs can live or die by their final chapters. I spent over 100 hours with Octopath Traveler 0, and although I'd say about 80 of those hours are pretty good overall with its fair share of ups and downs, it's those last 20 or so hours where it ascends to true greatness. If that sounds far too daunting, I get it, it's a big time investment, but what you get in return is something that only games of this scale can pull off, making good on its various story branches and stunning you with one moment after another as you approach its wild conclusion. While Octopath already had a brilliant turn-based combat system, this iteration adds its own quirks to freshen things up as the HD 2D art style delivers its unique brand of modernized nostalgia yet again. And along with an outstanding soundtrack to beautifully frame both pivotal and quiet moments alike, Octopath Traveler 0 shows that this series can and has pushed the genre to new heights.
This is our chance!
Octopath Traveler 0 is largely a repackaging of the mobile game Octopath Traveler Champions of the Continent, which is a prequel to the original entry. But by axing the microtransactions and gacha elements used to recruit party members, as well as introducing some very important additions to story and gameplay, it has become a fully fledged RPG worthy of this wider release.
Oh, flames! That guard is broken!
Now!
However, it's not always a smoothly paved road, and I'm not terribly surprised as any 100-hour game leaves plenty of room for valleys between its peaks. Story is where I had most of my reservations in the first half or so, and while I wasn't expecting the most beautifully written script or deepest character study, I found some of the dialogue and plot beats rather shallow. Comically evil villains made for bosses who were satisfying to take down, but when simple cruelty and thirst for power is the primary hook without much nuance, I didn't feel quite as compelled by them as characters. Despite the inconsistent quality of its storytelling, Octopath Traveler 0 still moves at a decent pace and doesn't linger on any one thing for too long. That's mainly due to how the main quest is structured. After a tragic prologue where your hometown is burned to the ground, you're given 3 story branches in order to pursue the trio of villains who were responsible. Themed around power, fame, and wealth, those 3 paths then converge into a conclusion for what is roughly the first half of the overall story, at about 40 hours. And don't be fooled by the fake out credits roll, because you've barely seen what Octopath Traveler 0 has up its sleeve. It then splits into 3 new quest lines that pick up those themes once again, and although they retread similar territory, the stakes get higher as more of Octopath's world gets involved and your understanding of it deepens. Warring kingdoms and corrupt religious institutions across the land of Orstera, where betrayal is more common than loyalty, they start to face greater consequences as the full picture comes into focus and the story gains real momentum.
For the family!
Rather than trying to build out 8 separate stories for characters that have to run in parallel, this game is able to tell a tighter tale by weaving its themes together, putting your custom character at the center of it, and elevating the important figures when needed. While your silent protagonist may seem like a typical chosen one, having the story revolve around the world's 8 rings that grant godly powers turns a cliche setup into a strong foundation for its deeper messages.
Go forth without hesitation, trusting the ring to guide you.
Octopath Traveler 2 was very successful with its cast of 8 and made for one of my favorite games of the last decade, but this change of pace is a smart direction. Unfortunately, it does mean that most of the 30+ party members you can recruit through side quests feel rather disposable, but the dissonance that creates is worth the trade-off. And like many of the seemingly frivolous features of Octopath Traveler 0, that roster eventually means something important in the grand scheme. There's a reason why you want to recruit as many of these characters as possible, and the way this unpredictably paid off had me absolutely stun-locked. That's a powerful example of how this game makes you care about the seemingly mundane things in retrospect and earns its big moments. Perhaps it could have benefited from trimming its lesser parts, especially where it runs into problematic tropes and naive politics.
Enough idle chatter. Get to work.
But the time you spend along the main quest lines builds an intimate understanding of the people who embody Orstera and the leaders you collaborate with in earnest.
Your Majesty, King Riven, is it truly you?
Avoiding any specific spoilers, once you hit the final quest line, Octopath Traveler 0 mashes the gas and does not stop. It almost felt like I was playing a whole new game. Dungeons get more intricate, boss fights get a lot tougher, character arcs come full circle, and motives begin to make much more sense. Plenty of stories go for the complex and sympathetic villain or anti-hero, but the true antagonist of this tale represents an incredibly thoughtful, fully realized, heart-wrenching, and intense exploration of this archetype. I was floored by the revelations therein, especially with both gameplay mechanics and music wielded as storytelling devices to paint a complete picture without having to explain itself out loud. The more I peel back the layers that make its final chapters so moving, the more it stuck with me well after I rolled credits on the Zero exclusive true ending with 106 hours on the dot. I've been on record saying that Octopath Traveler 2 has one of my favorite turn-based combat systems ever. It shines here as well, and for slightly different reasons. The boost and break systems give the typical dynamic of hitting elemental affinities some extra depth. Playing the guessing game of discovering what enemies are weak against gets a little tiresome, but once that part is solved, scheming your plan of attack relative to the turn order to break enemies and tee up big hits is oh so satisfying. Building each party member's boost points to add extra hits or increase spell potency is crucial to account for well in advance of subsequent turns. And lining up all of these variables while juggling the threat of a hard-hitting boss who can impose some impactful status ailments or wipe party members in one turn, it had me feeling like a genius tactician. Octopath might be playing on our nostalgia with HD 2D retro style visuals, yet it has continually set a high bar for turn-based combat systems in modern gaming. Party composition is quite different this time around since you have 8 active party members at all times, 4 in the front row and 4 in the back. With well over 30 characters in my roster, it's an overwhelming amount to process and manage. While the fundamentals of Octopath's combat system are familiar, matching character duos for the role that they occupy is a unique strategic layer that allows for a lot of flexibility. And because they all build boost points individually, you can dole out the big hits more frequently and keep up a brisker pace in battle compared to previous entries.
Knighthood, bring your shade.
How shall we proceed?
You sacrifice individual character depth, however, as each party member has just one job to progress through, aside from your protagonist, but you can at least master specific job skills to then equip to other characters to diversify their moveset. I found Octopath Traveler 2's character progression more meaningful, especially as it's tied to their individual stories, but Octopath Zero offers a welcome change of pace that hits the turn-based highs that have made the series special.
Prepare for death.
The slow motion cinematic camera cuts for max boost attacks and each party member's tide turning limit break still get me hyped as the action picks up.
A dance betwixt light and dark.
The tactical considerations you need to make in order to inflict damage well past the 9,999 soft limit requires effort and foresight that isn't spelled out for you.
Feel the pain. It is
But figuring out how to wield these systems and mechanics yourself is as satisfying as it is necessary to stand a chance in late game fights. Random encounters throughout dungeons and the overworld get overbearing, but that tedium pales in comparison to the gratification of landing a break and busting out every full-powered ability to overcome a boss you had no business defeating.
Magia Apocrypha. It ends now.
While the turn-based combat supports much of the A plot I've already praised, there's also a B plot that revolves around reconstructing your hometown of Wishvale.
Please, bring peace to Wishvale.
In the process of bringing it back to life narratively, you actually rebuild it with the town building system that's in a similar vein as Fallout 4 or Ni no Kuni 2. You collect crafting materials naturally, which then allow you to build housing, shops, and decor within certain parameters on a grid-based layout. It's an enjoyable side activity with tangible benefits that come from new buildings and recruiting new residents, such as discounted shop prices, a self-sufficient flow of materials, and a training ground for inactive party members to continue leveling up. This all may seem optional at first, and the system itself isn't particularly deep, but it becomes almost essential the further you get. And seeing the town you put together yourself in the background of cutscenes is a heartwarming touch that is its own small emotional reward.
Wow! This is incredible, Basil!
Like how the branching quest lines eventually converge sensibly, the town building system and story attached to it enrich the main quest in tangible ways as its overarching themes about what home means to you and holding on to your humanity come across as more genuine. And so I look back on this long journey often teary-eyed. Its prevailing messages and star characters really resonated with me, offering perspectives on how tragedy changes someone. That hits hardest when I listen back to my favorite songs on the soundtrack that evoke those feelings. Series composer Yasunori Nishiki has a particular style that lends itself extremely well to the genre, but he's an absolute madman when you break down the musicality of his work, especially here in Octopath Traveler 0. Rock orchestras with swelling strings and horns, sometimes backed by opera vocals and chanting choirs, boss battle themes make me feel like I can run through a wall. Hell, even the initial normal battle theme slaps hard. But it's also in the softer town themes that round things out, and specific motifs that punctuate important moments and work their way into the most impactful songs. Twice during late game bosses, I had to put my controller down, absolutely stunned by what I was hearing, before picking it back up and using the power of music to propel me into victory. So yeah, Yasunori Nishiki deserves to be mentioned alongside the GOATs. In this long review process, I was afforded the space to really reflect on my time with Octopath Traveler 0, and perhaps cool down from the adrenaline rush of finishing a massive RPG with a super tough final boss and multifaceted conclusion. What I realized in that time is that despite the bumps and low points across its 100+ hour runtime, all its moving parts really mattered in some way or another. The more I examine the final hours in particular, the more impressed I am by how daring and poetic this game is. It's an affecting journey that you won't really feel until you're at the end of the road. In many ways, it's a quintessential RPG with a dynamic turn-based combat system, slick HD 2D style, powerful messages tucked in battles against gods, and magnificent music to match each moment. Now, I don't expect everyone to give it the time it needs to fully bloom, but I can almost guarantee you'll find that few games blossom quite like Octopath Traveler 0.
Executive Reviews editor Tom Marks here with Michael Higham, our reviewer for Octopath Traveler 0, to talk a little bit more about his tastes around the genre, the review, that sort of stuff. Michael has reviewed a ton of RPGs for us, most recently Clair Obscur. He did Metal 4 ReFantazio. Before that, Persona 3 Reload, Final Fantasy 7 Rebirth. You are no stranger to big ol' RPGs. Mm-hmm. So what's your history with Octopath Traveler specifically? What made you want to review this game?
Yeah, I think I want to kick things off by saying, I mean, if you watch the review, I've probably talked about Octopath Traveler 2 extensively already, but for a little background, that is one of my favorite games in recent memory. That it had set such a high bar for me. I loved the stories, I loved the characters, everything, the music, the messages of the story, and how that world came together, and just like these very specific moments that really hit for me. I have a very fond, specific window of time in which I was playing Octopath Traveler 2, and it's one of those games where I wish I could play for the first time again. That's how much it means to me. I've said this in the past that my least favorite stories in Octopath Traveler 2 are still better than the best stories of 1, but I think that's the growing pains of having a new series, and they really hit the mark with the second game, and in Octopath Traveler 0, kind of, I would say it's in between those two games.
Yeah, it's great to get your context on the past games in the series, especially because, you did not review those for IGN, and your thoughts differ a little bit. That's okay. Our review was, I think, a little more critical, still liked 2, but was a little more critical. So it's nice to hear where you're coming from for this one. Let's talk about one thing that we discussed a little bit in the review in progress video that we published at the embargo for this game, which is length. RPGs, vary from 5 hours to 150, and you've run that full gamut. Mm-hmm. So I want to know, what's your ideal? Did you like that this game was so beefy, or would you have preferred it to maybe be 40, 50, or where's your sweet spot? Where do you like living?
Mm-hmm. I can go for anything, man. Like my favorite games of all time are so incredibly long. Persona 5 Royal is I would say my favorite game of all time. And it took me 120 hours when I reviewed that game back in 2020. I hit 121 hours with it. And I was like, I'm sad this is over. I wish there was more. Xenoblade Chronicles 3 is another one of those games where it just kept going and going, but I wasn't like, I can't wait for this to wrap up. It's more like, I'm sad that I am hitting the end of this, because I think I get very sentimental. And I think the thing is that when I invest all this time and energy into something, into a fictional world and characters who I've kind of grown to know over that time, once I feel it getting towards the end, I'm like, oh no, I don't want this to be over. It's like, for me, it was like the last day of school in high school. I'm like, oh no, all my friends, where are we going to go? Like we've been in school our entire lives, but now I'm sad that it's over. I used to ditch school and want to leave campus. What are you talking about? And that's kind of how I feel about RPGs as well, where I get a certain attachment to this world. I've invested so much time, and I feel like I've lived there for quite a while. And then when it wraps up, I get very sentimental about it. So I like that. Just when you think the game is spinning its wheels, or if it is kind of dragging on a little bit, then it hits the next plot beat. And I think that's really important for RPGs. Like I think this genre has gotten better about not forcing you to grind and padding out games artificially. Octopath Traveler 0 is not an offender in this case. So, it's not like I've spent 20 hours doing the boring stuff, quote unquote. So I would say it's time well spent.
On length, what is it like, peek behind the curtain, sort of inside baseball? Like, what's it like for you to review a super long game like this? Because for those who caught our review in progress chat before this, we waited to publish this review because we wanted you to take the time you needed to both finish the game, which we always try to do before a review, and also play it in a way that was not unhealthy to you or unnatural to the play experience, right? It's not really... some people go hard and play 20 hours a day on an RPG when it comes out, but that's not like the normal way that you would play an RPG like this. So we didn't want to force anyone to do that. So like for you, what is it like reviewing a really long game like this? Does it get daunting? Does it change how you think about it at all?
I've thought a lot about this because I have been doing this for a long time. I'm coming up on 10 years in games media, so I've been doing this for quite a while. I've reviewed a lot of long RPGs. I still get excited about it when code comes in for a big long RPG. So long as we have a couple weeks in advance, I get really excited about it. I'm still excited about it. You have to have balance, of course, because you want to play the game naturally. But for me, it's not like I'm sitting down like, okay, I need to grind out this RPG for work. It's like, no, I would be excited to be playing this game regardless of whether or not I bought it on release day or if I got it in advance for a review. And I still enjoy the process. And if anything, it makes me think harder about the game that I am playing. And when it comes time to write and put my thoughts together, like that is also a process that takes a long time. And you kind of need to sit with your thoughts and feelings for a little while. But once I bring it all together, I feel like very satisfied. And I think it's important to approach these games in a way that is as natural as possible. And that's kind of what I did with this. Thankfully, I'm afforded that luxury to play at my own pace. Yeah,
that's important to us because also, you can't call out industry crunch and then make your writers crunch. That feels a little hypocritical if we're going to do that.
Yeah. So again, I'm thankful I've been able to sort of take my time with it. But at the same time, I'm like, when I'm playing the game, I'm eager to get my thoughts out. So it's not for a lack of desire to do it. It's just like, I pull up that world map and I'm like, oh man, I wonder what would happen if I sailed over to this remote island that says I need to be level 65 for it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to see what that is. And that's just the consequence of the genre, consequence of the game, and how the series Octopath in general is built for those moments of discovery and those secret bosses and secrets to unlock that doesn't really tell you where to go. Like, I love that stuff, but that stuff does take time.
Well, Michael, thank you so much for chatting with us a little bit more about your Octopath tastes, the behind the scenes, the review, all that stuff. If you want another chat with Michael, our last one, I believe, was your review of Ghost of Yote, so you can go check that out. And if you want another retro art RPG recently. We reviewed Dragon Quest 1 and 2 HD 2D Remake, another great RPG to check out there as well. And for everything else, stick with IGN.